Morning. We are in Hilchos Gzeilah Aveda. We're going to learn a number of Rambams related to the same topic. In Perek, we're going to learn halacha Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, and parts of it, obviously, not each. Then Yud Gimel, Yud Daled, Yud Zayin, and Yud Ches. And I'm not going to read them inside necessarily, except a couple of lines here and there. And the topic is a very known topic called Dina de Malchusa Dina. I've seen people use it in very outlandish ways, thinking that Dina de Malchusa Dina means that you got to conduct yourself the way the country wants. Whether it's in Judaism, some things like that, which is not true. Judaism trumps anything else. But in financial matters that are not contradictory to Jewish law, there is a concept of din malchusa din. And what we're going to try to figure out is what is the power of the king, other than the fact that he can kill you, and therefore you have no choice. Listen to him. What is the legal power that is halachic power, and also figure out when that works. So Rambam starts off talking about taxes, and when the tax collector comes by, you know that he is loyal to the king and does exactly what the king wants, doesn't take any money for himself. And therefore, you got to listen to him. And he says, Lefi, this is a very key line of the Rambam, Shedin hamelech dinhu. The din of the king is a din. Now, you're not allowed to cheat. You're stealing the king from the king. Guy, Jew, doesn't make a difference. You're not allowed to steal. Okay. Halacha Yud Beis. That was halacha Yud Aleph. Halacha Yud Beis. If a king places a tax on a city, on every individual, he says the city has to come up with a certain amount of money. And he says every individual from year to year, regular tax, just an amount of money, not a percentage. And he makes a rule. If you don't give the tax, the king cuts everything away from you. This is the extreme IRS. It's okay. And anybody can be a help. They work for the king. A Jew can work for the king. As long as you don't change, you don't become a private. You're not looking to make your own money. Then goes another halacha. Halacha Yud Gimel. He talks about if there's an employee of the king or somebody who works for the king, and the king gets upset with him, and he takes away his field, and then he wants to sell it. It belongs to the king, and he can sell it to anyone he wants, give it to anyone he wants. And here the line, Shazed din amalachim kulam likach kol mammon shem kishakais amalem. They can take the money of those who work for them when they get angry with them. And the Melech took away their rights. If you buy it from the king, you don't pay property taxes. Now, obviously, this is not talking about property, it's talking about a specific individual who works for the king. Oh, now here goes a condition. Not according to his own laws that he created. He's a gazlan, and you're not allowed to. It can be taken away from anybody who takes it. It's another api halacha. And then he summarizes. This we're going to read inside part of it. Kol din sheyachkik oisur hamelech l'chol. Any din that's for everybody. As long as it's not directed at an individual. If he takes somebody without that doesn't fit the general known laws, he stole it from them, and he's a gezel. And that's the cloud. Now here you go again. I want to stress one more thing. Zion. He needs to build roads. He knocks down trees. He destroys homes on the way. Eminent domain. He can do it. You're allowed to drive on those roads. You're allowed to use the area because and in conclusion, here's where a very important piece. When is this halacha said? When a king his money is the exchange of the country. And now, listen to these words. This is a guy who was accepted as the king. They've accepted that he's their master. And they're his servants. If he's a guy who doesn't have that trust and level of control that his money is what's going around, is being used. Like any list of muziyonim, like any armed robbers, and this king who appointed himself and is not really accepted all over, nothing. Now I want to note, we're going to talk about later a different shiloh of a governor or a mayor in an area. What is his value? Now, not necessarily they could be stronger than we think, but we'll see. Now, I want to go and follow go through the different approaches that there are in this halacha from different rishonim, starting with an Mukiyesef and Baba Kama, Daf Mem Amud Beis, in the name of the Ravid, and who also brings from the Ritva, and Rabbeinu Yeina, that Dina de Malchusa goes on the laws of the kingdom and not a thing that the king himself made. It has to be a law of the kingdom or of any officer that decided to make a law. That's stealing. Now, there's a big point here I want to mention. It's very important. That one of the biggest proofs to this is the Gemara's expression, Dina de Malchusa Dina. The law of the kingdom, not the king. The law of the kingdom is a law. So they believe it has to be a law of the kingdom. Okay. The Ramban brings all of these opinions, and he goes a step further. And he says that you have to put that into what the others have held also. And that is that it's not enough law of the kingdom. It is a tradition. These laws are traditions from way back. But it's written in the laws and the bylaws of the king. But Dina de Malchusa doesn't work. If they make their own rules, they can't. It's gotta be within the constitution of the country. Interesting. There was I don't know if there was an actual written constitution, but there is a concept of a constitution. He says, yeah, and I guess there was some concept of a constitution as to what your guidelines are, and that's what the king has to fit. And he brings the Rimigash, doesn't say that, but he says you have to add. Now, the Rosh argues on them. He says, "V'chol mishpat choretz shetikim v'hinig hamelech hakol b'nei midanos dina ve'mishum gezel hamachzik mamen al pi hamelech." No, as long as the king doesn't discriminate against anybody, it's not a law of discrimination. Only Jews have to pay. Only these people have to pay. No. Only whites have to pay. No, none of that. That would be considered illegal. Reparations would be illegal. However, if it's aimed at everybody, the king can do what he wants. Okay. I'm cutting away a lot, so to get to the main points. The Rambam and Baba Basad of the Dalton base. On the Gemara of Dina the Malchus Dina, there's a piece of Gemara there. Rambam says, "Call Misa, Arnunias, Manhogish, and Mishkadam, Malachim, Shargina, Lahanig, Kusam, Dina, who any type of taxes, levies, enforcement rules that the king, that the kings put on the country, and their country is a din. Shekol b'nei amalchus v'kav malei. Why? Shekol b'nei amalchus v'kav malei mitzayim. Because the kingdom is one that the people want and accept. They accept the They accept the Hilchos din gomerhu. It's a complete halacha. The ein lemachzik b'mamen chavera b'chayk hamelech hanog b'ir mishum. Again, there's a lot other opinions and discussions. We're cutting all that out. The Tzitz Eliezer in the Tshuva, Pelik Tazayin Siman Tes, analyzes the Rambam that we just read, and he brings out three major points from it. Point number one, that Din of the Machusa is Minat Torah. Because he writes, so he wants to say it's like Mechila Kabbalah. Yeah, it's Mechila Kabbalah, and it's a Tanai Shemam Shekayim in Torah. A Tanai Shemam is valid according to Torah, and that's why the Rambam ends up Hilchos din gomerhu. Last words of the Rambam Hilchos din gomer. It's a real din gomer in Torah. Now he brings that not everybody else like that. He's going to be Shmuel in Ebenezer, Simon Chavches. Regarding Kedushin, in Gzeilah, that's a Sofik Kedushin, and because of Din of Machusa, you have to give it back. Midraisa Kansa Chayfetz, but the Machusa is only with Rabbanan, doesn't take it away. Okay. Second, that the rules of the king do not have to go through the whole country, even if it's on one city. Because he writes clearly, okay, not such a muchach, but it's all right. And he says that that's similar to the Rambam. Shouldn't be a rule for one individual person. So why? Of course not on the Mechad. No, it means not individual, but cities is okay. Okay. Yeah. And finally, the third thing, he says it has to be a rule, Medina Malachim, because he writes, he understands that to mean it's rules of the kings in general. Okay, it's not hard to say. But he says for the Rambam, it's not much like that, which is obvious. The Rambam says, "Kol din shiach geis amel." Okay, so let's now go to why would there be a din of din malchusa? So we have one approach of the Rashba, the way the Tzitz Eliezer understands it, is that it's mechila. Another approach is the Dvar Avram wants to say, based on Rabbeinu Yena, and that din malchusa is midin hefker bezin hefker. Now, the king is not a bezin; he's a guy, but it doesn't mean dafka bezin because the pasuk says sroru memshala. I'm sorry, because the pasuk says sroru is a Canaan. So we learn out any sroru and any memshala is like that. Any ownership, any controlling body is hefker is bezin hefker. Lav dafka a Jewish one. And then there could be another one, is because when a king is the king of the land, he conquers the land, and conquering has value in halacha. And he brings source of that, and that will be another thing. So the Rosh and the Durham says a different thing. The king can kick you out of the land. That means he owns it. And he says it's not relevant only to a king. It's relevant to any private individual that owns the land. He can kick you out. You got to follow what he wants. So we have four approaches. One, mechila, kinyan. Two, hefka bezin hefka. Three, kibush. Four, he can throw you out of the land if you got to listen to him. Okay. So, to summarize and to come to a conclusion, I want to analyze another approach that I believe that Rambam holds. But before we do that, let's analyze some of the things that the Rambam says. Remember, we said that one of the main sources of understanding of Dina de Malchus is the fact that it doesn't say Dina de Melech Din, Dina de Malchus Din. But the Rambam goes out of his way to write Shadin HaMelech Din. Now, it's not the translation of Dina Malchus Dina. But the Rambam says that. And he does it twice. In halacha Yud Aleph and halacha Yud Zayin. And as we said, if you're just doing translation, I don't think that if there were a Google Translate, it wouldn't translate it that way. The Rambam goes to lengths to explain why, if the king punishes one of his officers and one of his workers, so the Rambam goes to a length explaining Harei HaMelech Hevkiya Shibudam V'Nasis Chotzazu Eisadazu Kehevke V'Cholakoin Ha'ism and HaMelech Zoch. He was Mafkiya the Shibud and all that. What does he need that for? He just said, did HaMelech did. Then he summarizes, and he says, if you take from one person, it's not good, only if you take from everybody, but it's not with one person or not. It has to do with the fact that you're doing it Shalei Kedasa, you do it like It has to do with the fact you're going against the law. You're not doing it based on law. Not the one person, two people. Let us not do that. Then, what is this V'heim Lo Yavodim? That's not what we saw from the Rashba. The main thing is they were masking. So they follow his rules. What's this V'heim Lo Yavodim? And the answer is in the Alter Rebbe and the Tzemach Tzedek. The Alter Rebbe Hilchos Gzeilah Gneva Sif Tasvav, again with the halacha of the Isser of running of tax evasion, right? The king is considered one who has the rights to whatever his servants owe him. Now, remember, according to this version, taxes to a king is because it belongs to the king, which is one of the big issues when it comes to taxes, that it's treated as if the money belongs to the government. According to this, a king's taxes is taxes because he owns the place. Not he owns the place, he owns your money. Why? And again, And he quotes a lashon that's exactly like the Rambam. Hoyel v'skimu olav ne'yotza haaretz v'som kadaitim shuad aneim v'em avodim lo. V'chol asher lohem v'shubed lavidasai. Everything they have is obligated to the king's needs. And there he goes on to say, Leficha kol ascherish magia mimeno hameches mishubedes lamelech lit lameno maches. Everything is there that the king has a right to take. Ki'ilu hi b'shusei mamish, as if it's in his domain. Incredible, incredible way of seeing things. Okay, so now, the Tzemach goes on to say it even a step further, based on this altogether. What happens if a local officer decides to make a paritz in the old days, decides to make taxes and do things? So Alter says he is not a melech; he's an eved to the melech. The Tzemach Tzedek says it's only shayach by melech she'akal avodah. Unless the king appoints him to have that power. And that's where a mayor and a governor gets their power from, depending on how it's set up. Yeah. Okay, so based on this, there's another understanding, a whole new understanding. And I think that's the Rambam. That din of the malchusa is not hefke bezn hefke. It's not because he can kick you out. It's not mechila. And it's not kibush. It's eved. You belong to the king. And everything you have belongs to the king. Or at least is obligated to the king. Oh, we can understand why the Rambam writes those words. The Rambam is the source of this, because that's what he understands, Din Malchusa. And since the Yesod of Din Malchusa is because he's an Od and you're an Eved, that's not with Malchus, that's with the Melech. That's why the Rambam changes from the Gemara and writes Din HaMelech Din. And that's why he goes into this great length to explain. Melech Hefkiya Shibudam, Venasa Chotzazu, I saw the Zukehefker, to bring out that the Koyach HaMelech is, he can eat mafker anything he wants because it's Avdus. Everything is Meshuvah to him. And that's why it's only by a Melech, not by a Sara'ir, and not by anybody who decides to do anything on his own. Because you gotta be his Eved. Without that, it doesn't work. You can't call him another. Oh, so why does he stress? And how does that fit with the halacha of Shamasho? Which seems Adam Echad. The word is that he has to be acting as a king, not as a private vendetta. If it's la'odam echad b'fnei atzmai, it's not a kingly relationship now. It's a personal vendetta. And on that, you're not an eved. On that, you're not meshubet to his personal vendettas. You meshubet him as a king. So if a person is shamoshav, you're his eved, literally. But once it gets out of that, it becomes a personal thing. It doesn't mean 1, 2, it's... And that does not give him a kayach v'melech. You don't have the Od and Eved relationship. It's not like you're a real Eved and a real Oda in all terms, no matter what. He can pick you up and do whatever he wants to do. He can't work with you. He can't do anything that's chas v'shalom, the work that shouldn't be done with you. No, you can't do that. It has to be a relationship of Oda and Eved. Anyway, have a great day.